Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. While we chill here in Minecraft, building, exploring, and just vibing, let me tell you a story not about creepers or ender dragons, but about something a lot harder to fight in real life: heartbreak, trust, and second chances. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story because this one hits different. She said I wasn't her type, now she wants me back. She said I wasn't her type, bro. Can you even believe that shit? I mean, for real. It was like 3 years ago. Felt like a lifetime of cringe. Her name was Brittany because of course it was peak basic energy. I was a different man back then. A shell of a man, a pre-alpha beta with a hint of full-blown omega, if we're being honest. Fat, neckbeard adjacent, rocking the default gaming chair posture like it was an Olympic sport. My diet. A complex tapestry of tendies, Mountain Dew, and the occasional pizza roll for variety. My social life was exclusively Discord pings and arguments about lore. I thought I was being a good guy, you know? The nice guy trope, before I even knew it was a trope. Just lived it, breathed it, was it? Simping hard, a level of simpage that would make Inkel's blush and Mto's collectively shudder into oblivion. I met her through some mutual friends, or rather, I existed in the same physical space as her at a D&D campaign no one actually enjoyed, but everyone felt obligated to attend. She had that bright, airy laugh, the kind that probably made birds spontaneously start chirping or some equally cringe Disney movie bullshit. And her eyes, man, they were like deep pools of, I'm probably just being polite to you. I was instantly smitten, a complete tactical failure of the heart. Feels badman. My brain immediately went into full-blown wife mode, picturing us in a quaint little cottage, sharing memes, maybe even adopting a cat. Pathetic. I know. The sheer audacity of my delusion back then is truly astounding in retrospect. I'd hover around her, offering to fetch snacks, explaining obscure lore she clearly didn't care about, trying to subtly impress her with my vast knowledge of Reddit's sub-subs. She'd just nod, smile vaguely, then turn back to the dude flexing his bicep or talking about his new car, probably. I misinterpreted every single polite gesture as a sign of burgeoning affection, a true masterclass in self-deception. A casual brush of the arm. Soulmate energy. A quick glance in my direction. She's clearly thinking about our future. My brain was fried, bro, utterly cooked. Then came the moment of truth, the final boss battle of my beta existence. I'd worked up the courage over several weeks, fueled by a dangerous cocktail of caffeine, sugar, and the false hope of internet rom-coms. I cornered her after a session, heart pounding like a drum solo from a dying drummer. My palms were sweating, a literal waterfall of anxiety. My voice cracked, probably sounded like a dying frog trying to sing opera. I mumbled some incoherent words about how great I thought she was, how I really liked her, if she'd maybe want to, go get coffee or something, a classic low-stakes, high-rejection potential move. She looked at me, a polite, almost pitying smile. It was the smile of someone bracing for impact, the kind of smile you give to a child who's about to tell you he thinks Santa is real. She paused, took a breath, like she was about to deliver a eulogy for my hopes and dreams. You're a really sweet guy. My name, she started. The kiss of death opening line. The universal code for, you're about to be friend-zoned into oblivion. My gut just sank, collapsed like a Jenga tower in a hurricane. Pure agony. But you're just not really my type, she finished, a soft, almost regretful tone in her voice, but firm. Like a steel door gently closing on my entire existence. Not her type. Not her type. Those words echoed in my skull. A brutal, relentless mantra of inadequacy. It wasn't even a hard rejection, no dramatics, no yelling, just a quiet, polite dismissal, which somehow felt worse. Felt like I wasn't even worth the effort of a proper brush-off. I probably stood there, mouth agape, looking like a fish trying to remember how to breathe air. She gave another small, apologetic smile, probably thinking, please don't cry, please don't cry. And then she just walked away, just like that. The world didn't end, the sky didn't fall, but in my head, a million tiny glass figurines of my future shattered simultaneously. I went home that night completely wrecked. It wasn't just the rejection, it was the not my type. It wasn't anything specific I did wrong. It was just me. My entire being was fundamentally incompatible with her ideal. That stung, bro, deeply. It was an existential crisis delivered with a polite smile. I spent the next few months in a self-pity spiral of epic proportions. My room became a biohazard zone, a monument to neglected hygiene and discarded snack wrappers. I binged anime, browsed for chan/r 9K/ like it was gospel, swallowed the black pill whole, chugged the despair like it was a protein shake. All women are like that, I convinced myself. They only want Chad, they only want money, they only want muscles, they only want the top tier. And me, I was just not that. I was the inverse of that. I was the anti-Chad, the virgin sentinel of the keyboard warrior realm. It was a dark time, very dark. I gained more weight. My skin broke out. My posture deteriorated further. My soul became a shriveled raisin of resentment. I raged online, anonymously, of course, pouring out my bitterness into the endless void of the internet, finding solace in shared misery. It felt good, for a moment, to not be alone in my perceived victimhood, but it ultimately just reinforced the echo chamber of despair. My friends, the few I had, tried to intervene gently. They suggested I get out more, try new things, maybe shower. But their words just bounced off the impenetrable fortress of my self-loathing. I was a creature of comfort and resentment, curled up in my digital cave. One particularly bleak Tuesday night, after an especially brutal session of online roasting and realizing I hadn't seen the sun in days, something just snapped. Not a positive snap at first, more like the snap of a rusty wire in my brain, a short circuit of pure disgust. I looked in the mirror, really looked at myself, not with the usual filtered lens of self-pity, but with brutal, unfiltered clarity. What I saw was a physical manifestation of everything I hated about my life. A soft, unkempt creature, eyes glazed over from too much screen time, skin pale and pasty, a faint greasy sheen visible even in the dim light of my monitor. My neckbeard was truly reaching its peak, an unholy scraggly bush. My clothes were shapeless, stained with the ghosts of forgotten meals. It wasn't not her type. It was not anyone's type. It was not even my type. That was the moment. The disgust was so profound, so absolute, it bypassed all my usual defense mechanisms of cope and cynicism. A spark ignited, a tiny, furious ember in the vast wasteland of my despair. I remember what triggered it specifically. Some anon on feet had posted, "Do it for yourself, king, not for women." And another anon replied, "No, do it for women, but make sure they have to work for it after you've ascended." That second part resonated with a primal, vindictive satisfaction. It wasn't about getting her back. Not yet. It was about proving them all wrong. It was about becoming someone new, someone I respected, someone they would regret dismissing. The first step was a literal cold shower, a shock to the system, washing away some of the grime, both physical and metaphorical. Then I threw out all the junk food in my room, a grim ritual of emptying cupboards and bins. My poor garbage can became a graveyard of processed snacks. It felt like I was physically purging the old me. I went to bed that night with an empty stomach and a weird, buzzing energy in my brain. The next morning, it was still there, the resolve, the anger transmuted into fuel. I pulled up a beginner bodyweight workout video on YouTube. It was pathetic, really. 5 push-ups left me gasping for air, muscles shaking like I was having a seizure. A single pull-up seemed like an impossible feat, a myth reserved for gods and chads. But I did it. I pushed through the shame, the weakness, the sheer humiliation of my own physical inadequacy. I started walking, then jogging, then running. My shins screamed. My lungs burned. My flabby guts sloshed with every step, but I kept going. I researched nutrition like it was a life-or-death exam. Calories in, calories out. Protein, carbs, healthy fats. Meal prep became my new religion. Chicken, rice, broccoli, a boring but effective holy trinity. I learned to cook, rudimentary at first, then gradually refining my skills, becoming a kitchen artist, weighing every gram, tracking every macro. The gym became my second home. Initially, it was terrifying. Walls of muscle everywhere, grunting, clanking weights, the smell of sweat and ambition. I felt like an alien, a soft blob in a world of sculpted gods. I started with the machines, trying to blend in, to hide my weakness. Then I watched, I learned, I absorbed. YouTube fitness channels became my professors, teaching me proper form, progressive overload, the science of hypertrophy. I moved to free weights, squat rack, bench press, deadlifts, the primal movements. It was brutal. There were days I wanted to quit, days my body screamed in protest, days I felt like I was making no progress. But every time that thought crept in, I'd remember Brittany's face, her polite smile, her "not my type." That became my mantra. I lifted with fury, with focus, with a burning desire to sculpt myself into an entirely different being. The weight came off slowly at first, then accelerating. My face started to emerge from the shroud of puffiness. My jawline, which I hadn't seen since childhood, made a triumphant return. Muscles began to appear, faint outlines at first, then hardening, defining. My shoulders broadened, my chest expanded, my arms thickened. I started hitting PRs, personal records, regularly, the numbers on the bar steadily climbing, a physical manifestation of my mental fortitude. The mirror became my friend, not my enemy. I started seeing glimpses of the man I was becoming, not just the man I used to be. This wasn't just about physical transformation, though. That was just the visible tip of the iceberg. I realized I needed to upgrade my brain too, my finances, my entire life stack. I started reading books, real books, not just Reddit threads. Stoicism, self-improvement, finance, history. Marcus Aurelius became my spiritual gym bro. I devoured knowledge, trying to fill the voids in my understanding of the world, of people, of success. My financial situation was equally pathetic. Minimum wage job, no savings, living paycheck to paycheck, gaming expenses eating up what little disposable income one had. I needed capital to fuel this glow up. I started researching, not just the easy get-rich-quick schemes, but actual sustainable wealth building. I learned about investing, about entrepreneurship, about leverage. I dabbled in crypto, starting with a tiny, laughable sum, reading white papers like they were sacred texts, analyzing charts with obsessive detail. I got burned a few times, lost some money, learned some harsh lessons, but I didn't quit. I doubled down, learned from my mistakes, refined my strategies. I started a small online business, dropshipping initially, then moving into something more specialized, leveraging my newfound digital marketing skills. It wasn't easy. Late nights, early mornings, sacrificing sleep, sacrificing leisure. My old friends, the D&D crew, slowly drifted away. They couldn't understand my sudden transformation, my obsession with self-improvement. They called me autistic for tracking macros, boring for not wanting to play games all night, a sellout for trying to make money. Good riddance, honestly. They were crabs in a bucket trying to pull me back down. I built a new social circle slowly, painfully. People from the gym, from online entrepreneur groups, from networking events I forced myself to attend despite my inherent awkwardness. I learned to make eye contact, to engage in conversation, to not ramble incessantly about niche topics. It was like learning a new language, the language of confident social interaction. I practiced in front of the mirror, rehearsed conversations, analyzed body language. It felt fake at first, like wearing a costume, but gradually it became more natural. The confidence started to build, real confidence, not just feigned bravado. I started dressing better, investing in clothes that actually fit, that projected an image of competence and success. I got a proper haircut, ditching the shaggy, unkempt mess for something sharp and modern. My skin cleared up with a diligent skincare routine, a small investment with huge returns. My teeth, always a source of quiet shame, got a professional cleaning and whitening. Every single detail was addressed, every single imperfection systematically chipped away. I was building myself, piece by meticulous piece, into a completely new person. Years passed, man. 3 years of relentless grinding. The crypto gamble paid off not instantly, but steadily, meticulously. My online business scaled, generating passive income that dwarfed my old salary. I diversified my investments, acquired real estate, built a solid financial foundation. The gym. It wasn't just a place to lift anymore, it was a sanctuary, a meditation. I was strong, lean, muscular, a physical specimen I never thought possible. My body fat percentage was in the single digits, veins popping, muscles hard as stone. My posture was perfect, shoulders back, head held high, radiating an aura of calm, collected power. My gaze was direct, unwavering, no longer darting around like a cornered mouse. I drove a nice car, not a flashy supercar. Too much attention, cringe. but a sleek, understated German machine that whispered, "I've made it," without screaming it. My apartment wasn't a dingy, cluttered cave anymore. It was a minimalist, high-rise bachelor pad, overlooking the city lights, impeccably clean, filled with curated art and high-tech gadgets, a testament to my changed aesthetic. I traveled, saw the world, experiencing cultures, expanding my horizons, not just through a screen. I had a vibrant social life, a network of ambitious, driven individuals who pushed me to be better. And yes, I dated. A lot. Women I never thought would even glance in my direction. Beautiful, intelligent, interesting women. I learned to navigate the dating scene with confidence, with an understanding of attraction dynamics, not with desperation or simpage. I became the man who was the type, the kind of man who didn't need external validation, but commanded it naturally. I had achieved, through sheer force of will and a metric ton of effort, a level of self-mastery that felt almost godlike compared to my former self. Then the inevitable happened. The universe, in its infinite comedic timing, decided it was time for the final act of this grand redemption arc. I was at a trendy downtown cafe, meeting with a business contact, discussing a potential investment opportunity. I was wearing a perfectly tailored suit, a subtle luxury watch peeking from my cuff, sipping an artisanal espresso, projecting an image of effortless competence. We were mid-conversation, deep into the intricacies of market trends, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. My initial thought was annoyance. I turned, maintaining my composed business facade. And there she was, Brittany. My mind did a full system reboot, a rapid-fire download of every memory, every cringe moment, every stinging word from 3 years prior. But the new OS, the chat OS, quickly took over. She looked different. Not bad, but definitely not the same bright, carefree girl from before. There was a weariness in her eyes, a slight artificiality to her smile. Her clothes were trendy, but a bit too tight, a bit too desperate to appear current. She looked like she was trying hard to hold onto something that was slipping away. Her jaw dropped, literally cartoonishly, like she'd just seen a ghost. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, scanned my entire form, from my perfectly styled hair to my expensive shoes. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to reconcile the image of the man before her with the memory of the beta simp she dismissed so casually. "My name?" she choked out, her voice a whisper of genuine shock. My business contact, a sharp, perceptive woman, raised an eyebrow, sensing the palpable tension. I gave Brittany a cool, polite smile, the kind you give to a distant acquaintance whose name you can't quite recall. "Brittany?" I acknowledged, my voice calm, deep, devoid of any emotional residue. "Long time no see." She stammered, struggled for words. I almost didn't recognize you. "You look incredible." The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implication. My inner monologue was a torrent of based and cope and feels good, man. My business contact excused herself politely, recognizing the personal nature of the unexpected encounter, giving me a knowing glance. I watched her go, then turned back to Brittany, leaning back in my chair, crossing my arms, radiating casual dominance. "Thanks," I said simply, no elaborate explanations, no justifications. She started talking, a nervous stream of consciousness, about how she was just in the area, how she'd heard things, vague rumors of my success, how she'd always wondered what happened to me. It was all transparent, bro. A thinly veiled attempt to gauge the extent of my glow-up, to reestablish a connection she had summarily severed. She asked if I was still into D&D, a pathetic attempt to find common ground with the ghost of my former self. I chuckled, a low, dismissive sound. "Nah, not really my thing anymore," I stated, a subtle jab, a reminder of the chasm between our past and present. She looked down, fidgeting with her purse, her confidence visibly eroding under my calm, unwavering gaze. I really regret how things ended," she blurted out, her voice softer, almost pleading. "I was so stupid back then. You really were a sweet guy." Oh, the irony. Now I was a sweet guy. Back then, I was just not her type. The contrast was delicious, a bitter, satisfying meal of poetic justice. "You said I wasn't your type, Brittany?" I reminded her, not with anger, but with a detached observation, like stating a historical fact. Her head snapped up, eyes wide again. I know, and I was so wrong. I've been thinking about that for so long, wishing I could go back and change it. She went into a full-blown explanation, a torrent of self-justification. How she was young, how she was naive, how she didn't know what she wanted, how she was caught up in superficial things. She even vaguely alluded to her own struggles, her relationships since then, implying they hadn't worked out, painting a picture of regret and disillusionment. It was textbook, bro, straight out of the girls who reject you then want you back playbook. She was seeing the alpha, the success, the confidence, and suddenly, my type had magically shifted into her type. The red pill was in full effect, illuminating the raw, transactional nature of female attraction. I just listened, my expression unreadable. Let her talk. Let her squirm. Let her feel the weight of her past judgment. She eventually finished, her desperate plea hanging in the air, her eyes fixed on mine, searching for any sign of forgiveness, any flicker of the old simp she once knew. So, she said, finally, gathering her courage, I was wondering if maybe we could grab dinner sometime? Catch up properly? The invitation hung there, a beacon of her hope, a desperate olive branch extended into the chasm she herself had created. My moment, the culmination of 3 years of pain, discipline, and relentless self-improvement. I could have said yes, paraded her around, then ghosted her. I could have rejected her outright, delivered a scathing monologue about her superficiality. But that felt too easy, too vindictive, too reminiscent of the old me, the one who cared too much. I looked at her, truly looked at her. She wasn't the demon I'd built her up to be in my darkest moments. She was just a woman, caught in the currents of her own choices, now regretting one of them. And honestly, I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, no desire for revenge. Just a profound sense of indifference. The old wound had healed, leaving no scar, no lingering pain. The man who had been rejected by Brittany was dead, replaced by someone entirely new, someone who existed on a completely different plane. She wasn't my type anymore. The irony was delicious. I gave her another small, polite smile, the kind that was friendly but held no warmth, no invitation. Brittany, I said, my voice measured calm. I appreciate the thought. I paused, letting the silence draw out, letting her anticipation build. But honestly, I continued, I'm in a very different place now. My life is pretty full, and I'm looking for someone who aligns with where I am now, not where I was back then. Her face fell, the hope draining from her eyes, replaced by a dull, aching understanding. She got it. She finally understood. It wasn't about revenge or rejection or even forgiveness. It was simply about growth. I had outgrown her, outgrown the version of myself that would have chased her, that would have yearned for her approval. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. My business contact was already back at her table, pretending not to watch, but clearly paying attention. It was good seeing you, Brittany, I said, a final, polite dismissal. No dramatics, no lingering goodbye, just a clean, decisive cut. I turned and walked away, my posture erect, my steps confident, leaving her sitting there, alone, with the echoes of her past decision. The feeling was pure, unadulterated triumph, bro. Not victory over her, but victory over my former self. Victory over the beta, the simp, the neckbeard. Victory over the narrative of not my type. I was my own type now, and that was all that mattered. The journey was long, brutal, and often lonely. But every single rep, every single late night, every single moment of doubt overcome had led to this. This moment of quiet, powerful, self-assured indifference. The ultimate red pill, ingested and fully integrated. It's not about them, it's about you, king. Always. Stay strong, stay focused, stack your paper, lift your weights, read your books. Become the man you were always meant to be. Then and only then will their type become irrelevant. Like this video if you felt that deep in your soul. Subscribe for more alpha content and stories that hit harder than a deadlift PR. My girlfriend's friends said I was a red flag, brothers. Not just one. A whole damn parade of them. Like a Soviet May Day celebration of my personal inadequacies. Her name is Sarah. And she's a goddamn saint for putting up with this whole saga. A true diamond in the rough. When we first got together, I wasn't exactly polished, you know? I wasn't a fat neckbeard this time, different story, different starting point. I was just intense, focused, driven. In their world, that was basically the trifecta of a future serial killer. Her friends, let's call them the Coven, were a monolithic entity of brunch, white wine, and vapid opinions sourced directly from whatever TikTok therapist was trending that week. There was Chloe, the ringleader, who thought having an opinion on astrology was a substitute for a personality. Then Jessica, whose entire life goal was to get enough Instagram engagement to shill for a teeth whitening kit. And Emily, the quiet one, who just nodded along, her brain a smooth, frictionless surface where original thoughts went to die. Their collective brainpower could barely power a Tamagotchi, but they held court like they were the goddamn Oracle of Delphi. And their verdict on me: red flag city, population me. It all started at one of their sacred rituals, a girls' night that Sarah dragged me to, promising it would be fun. Spoiler, it was not fun. The air was thick with the smell of cheap Prosecco and passive aggression. They started grilling me, a friendly interrogation disguised as casual conversation. Chloe asked me what my 5-year plan was. I told her I was scaling my e-commerce business, aiming for 7 figures, and planning to start investing in real estate. Her face just froze. A glitch in the matrix. She exchanged a look with Jessica. A silent, telepathic message that clearly translated to, he's obsessed with money, probably compensating for something. Red flag number 1. Ambition. Then Jessica asked me why I didn't have any pictures of Sarah on my Instagram. I told her my Instagram was for my business, a tool for marketing, not a digital scrapbook of my personal life. I told them I show Sarah I love her by, being a good boyfriend in real life, not by farming likes with a #couplegoals post. You could have heard a pin drop. The horror on their faces. It was like I just admitted to sacrificing puppies to a dark god. Red flag number 2. Valuing privacy over public validation. The final nail in the coffin was when Emily was complaining about her boss. A classic. He asked me to do my job sob story. The Coven was in full support mode. You're a queen. He can't treat you like that. Just quit. You deserve better. Sarah looked at me, expecting me to join the chorus of useless platitudes. So I asked Emily, did you document the incidents? Have you spoken to HR? What's the protocol for this in your employee handbook? I was offering a solution, a strategy. They looked at me like I was speaking Klingon. Chloe literally said, "Oh my God, can you not just feel things? Why do you have to be so analytical?" Red flag number 3, offering logic instead of just emotional validation. The night ended with them hugging Sarah tightly, whispering things like, "We're here for you, and you're so strong," as if she were dating a literal goblin who lived under a bridge. I could feel their judgment radiating off them like heat. The car ride home was quiet. Sarah was trying to process the absolute cringe fest that had just occurred. She eventually told me what they said later, after a few more similar encounters. "They just think you're a bit intense," she said, choosing her words carefully. "They said you give off provider energy, but in a scary, controlling way. Provider energy. They said that it was a bad thing. They wanted a guy who had good vibes," which was their code for a dude with no job, a trust fund, and a man bun, who could spend all day taking aesthetic photos of his latte art. They said I didn't prioritize Sarah because I'd work on my business on a Saturday night instead of going to some overpriced cocktail bar. They said I was emotionally unavailable because I didn't want to dissect every single one of my feelings in a group setting. They basically built a psychological profile of me as a high-functioning sociopath who was probably going to lock Sarah in a basement once my master plan was complete. It was infuriating, bro. Absolutely maddening. These women, who had never built anything in their lives, who floated from one mediocre job to another, whose only long-term plan was finding a guy to pay for their lifestyle, were passing judgment on me, on my character, on my relationship with the woman I loved. Started to get to Sarah, too. A constant drip, drip, drip of poison in her ear. "Are you sure you're happy? He never seems to just relax. Don't you wish he was more spontaneous?" We had a few fights about it. Tense conversations where I felt like I was defending my entire existence. I told her, "Sarah, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for us. I'm building a future, a foundation, so that one day we don't have to worry about rent or bills or any of that shit. So we can have real freedom. And this is why Sarah is a queen. She listened. She actually heard me. There was a moment, a turning point where she had to choose. The easy path of her friend's approval or the hard path with me. She chose me. She told them to back off. She said, I love him, and I believe in what he's doing. If you can't support that, then you're not supporting me. Caused a rift for sure. The brunch invites became less frequent. The group chat went quiet, but it solidified us, made us a team against the world. So what did I do? I doubled down. Their criticism became my fuel. Every "he's too ambitious" was another hour spent coding, another marketing campaign launched, another supplier sourced. Every "he's emotionally unavailable" was another book on business strategy one read, another podcast on wealth creation I devoured. I leaned into the red flags. I became the ultimate provider in training. My life became a blur of work, Jim and Sarah. No wasted time. No pointless social engagements. Every action had a purpose. Every minute was allocated towards the goal. While their good vibes boyfriends were at music festivals getting high, I was negotiating deals with manufacturers in China at 3 a.m. While they were taking selfies at the pumpkin patch, I was learning about tax law and corporate structures. It was a grind, a relentless, soul-crushing, beautiful grind. And Sarah was there, my ride or die, bringing me coffee, proofreading my emails, celebrating the small wins, and reassuring me during the setbacks. She was my partner in the truest sense of the word. Meanwhile, in the land of the coven, things were not going as planned. Chloe's astrology-approved boyfriend, a freelance graphic designer who had never designed a graphic in his life, cheated on her and gave her chlamydia. Based. Jessica's Instagram model boyfriend dumped her for a girl with more followers. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Emily's perpetually finding himself bartender boyfriend decided to find himself in Thailand, alone, and never came back. Their group chat, which I was never a part of but heard about, transformed from a place of smug judgment into a wasteland of dating app horror stories and bitter complaints about how there are no good men out there. The years ticked by. 1, 2, then 3, and the payoff came. It wasn't a sudden explosion of success, but a steady, inexorable rise. The e-commerce business didn't just hit 7 figures. It blew past it. I hired a team, automated the systems, and turned it into a money-printing machine that ran itself. The real estate investments started paying off, generating passive income streams. The stock portfolio I'd been building with every spare dollar grew into a formidable beast. We bought a house. Not just a house, a home. A beautiful place in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, with a big backyard for a future dog and a home office for me that looked like something out of a magazine. I traded in my old beater for a Tesla, silent and sleek, the perfect symbol of a future that had finally arrived. We traveled, not to cheap resorts but to places we'd only dreamed of. Italy, Japan, New Zealand. We experienced the world, on our terms, funded by the very red flags her friends had despised. My physique changed, too. The stress of the grind was replaced by the discipline of the gym. I was lean, strong, and carried myself with a quiet confidence that only comes from building something from nothing. Sarah was thriving. She'd quit her soul-crushing corporate job to pursue her passion for painting. Her studio filled with light, her face free from the stress that used to line it. She was happy, truly, deeply happy. And then came the reckoning, the great convergence, our housewarming party. Sarah, being the good-hearted person she is, decided to extend an olive branch and invite the coven. She wanted to show them that everything was okay, that we'd made it. I was against it, but I relented. Let them see. Let them witness the final act. They walked in, and the change in atmosphere was palpable. Their eyes darted everywhere, taking in the high ceilings, the custom kitchen, the expensive art on the walls, some of it Sarah's. They looked like peasants entering a king's court. They were dressed in their usual fast fashion best, while our other guests were a mix of successful entrepreneurs, artists, and professionals, the new circle we had built. They huddled in a corner at first, clutching their glasses of champagne like life rafts, whispering to each other. I watched them from across the room, a smirk playing on my lips. It wasn't a mean smirk, just one of pure, unadulterated vindication. Then, one by one, they came to me. Chloe was first. She cornered me by the ridiculously large charcuterie board I had insisted on. "Wow! My name," she began, her voice dripping with a fake sweetness that could give you diabetes. "This place is amazing. You've done so well." I just nodded. "Thanks, Chloe. We like it." She fidgeted, then the real reason for her approach came out. "So I was thinking," she said, lowering her voice. "You're obviously really good with money and stuff. I was wondering if you could, give me some advice? My credit card debt is getting kind of insane." The same woman who had silently judged me for being ambitious was now asking me for free financial consulting. I gave her some basic, generic advice. Spend less than you earn, make a budget, and watched her walk away, looking unsatisfied, as if she expected a magic spell to solve her problems. Next was Jessica. She found me while I was showing someone my home gym. "I can't believe you have a full squat rack in your house," she said, her eyes wide. "So, Sarah tells me you hired a bunch of people for your company? Like social media managers and stuff?" I confirmed that I had. "That's so cool," she said, forcing a laugh. "I'm just so sick of my job. It's a total dead end. I just feel like I'm not reaching my full potential, you know?" This from the woman whose only potential was measured in likes and shares. She was basically asking for a job, a handout, from the man she dismissed as a soulless workaholic. I told her we weren't hiring at the moment, but that I'd keep her in mind. A polite and complete lie. The final boss was Emily. She approached me at the end of the night, as things were winding down. She was a little drunk, her usual placid expression replaced with a sort of desperate sincerity. "You make Sarah so happy," she said, her eyes glassy. "I've never seen her like this. Secure. Confident." I just said, "She makes me happy too. All the guys I date are just boys," she continued, her voice cracking. "They have no direction, no plan. They just want to vibe. I'm so tired of it. I just want to find a guy who knows what he wants, who is building something. A guy who is serious. A man." And there it was. The final admission. The ultimate reversal. She was literally describing me. She was describing the exact collection of traits that she and her friends had labeled as giant, flashing neon red flags 3 years earlier. The intensity was now direction. The ambition was now security. The analytical nature was now seriousness. They didn't want a boyfriend anymore. They wanted a husband. They wanted a provider. They wanted a man. But they had spent their prime years chasing boys with good vibes, only to realize that good vibes don't pay the mortgage. Good vibes don't build a future. Good vibes leave you alone at 30 with credit card debt and a string of failed relationships. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I felt a strange sort of pity. They had been given the cheat codes to a happy life. Find a good man with a plan and support him. But they had thrown the book away because they didn't like the cover. I just nodded at Emily, gave her a pat on the shoulder, and went to find my girlfriend. My fiancée, actually. I'd proposed a week earlier, with a ring that would have made their eyes water. I found Sarah on the patio, looking at the stars, a peaceful smile on her face. I wrapped my arms around her. "Having a good time?" I asked. "The best," she said, leaning back against me. "They finally get it, you know? They see it." "See what?" I asked, playing dumb. "That you're red flags," she said, turning to kiss me. "We're just green flags they were too colorblind to see. And that was it, brothers. That was the victory. It wasn't the house or the money or the car. It was that quiet moment of validation, shared with the one person who believed in me from the start. So let them call you a red flag. Let them judge your ambition. Let them misunderstand your focus. Just keep building. Keep grinding. Find a woman who sees the architect, not just the messy construction site. Because one day, they'll be standing outside your castle, asking for directions, wondering how you built it all. And you'll just smile, close the gate, and go back to the queen who helped you lay every single stone. Smash that like button if you're out here building an empire. Subscribe for more stories about winning the long game. She left me for someone rich, bro. A tale as old as time. A song as old as rhyme, hypergamy, and the beast. It wasn't even a subtle thing, not a slow drift apart. It was a clean, brutal amputation of my soul with a rusty, money-green hacksaw. Her name was Megan. Of course it was. She had that girl next door vibe. If the girl next door had a hidden spreadsheet in her brain constantly calculating your net worth and future earning potential. When we were together, I was in my struggling artist phase, which is a romantic way of saying I was broke as a joke, living on ramen noodles and the fumes of my own ambition. I was a musician, a guitarist and songwriter, pouring every ounce of my being into my craft, convinced that passion and talent were the only currencies that mattered. Spoiler alert, they are not. We lived in a crappy little apartment that always smelled faintly of damp and my roommate's questionable cooking experiments. But to me, it was our castle. I'd write songs for her on my beat-up acoustic guitar, songs about her eyes, her smile, the way she laughed at my dumb jokes. Cringe, I know, peak simp behavior, but my heart was pure, my intentions noble, my bank account empty. She seemed to love it. She'd sit on the floor, legs crossed, chin in her hands, and look at me with what I thought was adoration. Now I realize it was the look of a wildlife documentarian observing a rare, financially non-viable species in its natural habitat. "You're going to be a star someday," she'd say, her voice full of feigned belief. She was my biggest fan, my muse, my reason for grinding through the shitty open mic nights and the constant rejection emails from record labels. Our dates were cheap by necessity. Walks in the park, sharing a single slice of pizza, sneaking a bottle of cheap wine into a free movie screening. I thought it was romantic, building a life on a foundation of love, not money. She saw it as a temporary inconvenience, a character-building exercise before she could upgrade to the premium version of life. The signs were there, of course, little red flags I chose to ignore, blinded by love and a healthy dose of willful ignorance. She'd linger a little too long in front of jewelry store windows. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated collection of influencers on yachts and in Dubai, a digital vision board for a life I couldn't provide. She'd make jokes about my car, a 15-year-old Honda that sounded like a dying lawnmower. "Imagine if we could just take off for the weekend to Paris." She'd sigh, scrolling through her phone, and I'd just laugh, thinking it was a cute fantasy, not a job application I was currently failing. Then Kyle entered the picture. His name was literally Kyle. You cannot make this stuff up. He was everything I wasn't. He worked in finance, something with acquisitions and portfolios, which was code for my dad gave me a job. He was tall, but in a soft, unearned way, like a plant that had been overwatered. He wore a watch that cost more than my entire collection of musical equipment. His conversation was a bland tapestry of cliches about the stock market and his recent trip to Aspen. He was the human equivalent of a beige cubicle wall. But he was rich, stupidly, effortlessly rich. Megan met him through one of her networking friends, the kind of friend who collects people based on their potential utility. She started mentioning him casually. Kyle was telling me about this amazing new restaurant. Kyle's firm just closed a huge deal. It was like she was beta testing his name in my presence, seeing how it felt on her tongue. My gut knew. My brain, the loyal simp, tried to deny it. He's just a friend, I'd tell myself, a mantra of the doomed. The end came quickly. She invited me out to dinner, a place far nicer than we could usually afford. My first thought, the absolute state of my delusion, was, oh, she's treating me. That's sweet. No, it was her breaking up with me on neutral, well-lit territory, a preemptive strike to prevent a scene. She was wearing a new dress, one I'd never seen before. It looked expensive. A gift, no doubt. A down payment. She picked at her food, avoiding my eyes. The small talk was excruciating, like trying to make a sandcastle in a hurricane. Finally, she put her fork down, took a deep breath, and deployed the weapon of mass destruction. "I think we should see other people." The words just hung there in the air, cold and sterile. My brain short-circuited. I asked the dumbest question you can ask in that situation. Why? She launched into a pre-rehearsed speech, a masterpiece of corporate speak and emotional detachment. It was about her needing to find herself, about us being on different paths, about her requiring a different kind of stability in her life. Stability, that was the key word. The sanitized, socially acceptable way of saying money. I pressed her, my voice cracking, the pathetic musician asking for one more encore. "Is this about Kyle?" I asked, a flicker of something in her eyes. Annoyance, guilt, Or maybe just the mild frustration of a plan not going as smoothly as anticipated. It's not about Kyle, she lied. A lie so blatant it was almost impressive. It's about me. I love you, she said, twisting the knife. But I'm not in love with you anymore. The classic line. The get-out-of-jail-free card for every woman who's ever monkey-branched from a man of potential to a man of prosperity. I was devastated. A complete system failure. Collapsed like a Jenga tower in a hurricane. She gave me a pitying look, the kind you give a stray dog, and said, "I'll get the check." Of course she would. It was probably his credit card anyway. The next 2 weeks were a black hole. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just existed in a cloud of misery and cheap whiskey. My guitar collected dust in the corner, mocking me. What was the point of writing songs if the muse had sold her soul for a better benefits package? Then the final blow. The Instagram post. A picture of her and Kyle in front of the Eiffel Tower. Her smile was wider, brighter, more dazzling than I'd ever seen it. She was holding up her left hand, a diamond the size of a small planet glittering on her finger. The caption? I said OUI, feeling like the luckiest girl in the world. Future Mrs. Kyle. We. She really wrote we. The sheer, unadulterated cringe of it all was almost enough to snap me out of my depression. Almost. That image burned itself into my brain. Her, happy, successful, living the life she'd always dreamed of. Me in my smelly apartment, staring at a screen, a ghost in my own life. That was rock bottom. The absolute nadir. I lay on my floor for what felt like days, the digital ghost of her happiness haunting me. And then, something shifted. The sadness, the all-consuming grief, began to curdle. It soured, fermented, and transformed into something else. Rage. Pure, white-hot, industrial-grade rage. Not at her. Not really. She was just a predictable variable in an equation I had failed to solve. She was a force of nature like a hurricane or a flood. Hypergamy.exe had run its course, and I was just a temporary file that had been deleted. No, the rage was directed at me. At my weakness. My naivete. My stupid, romantic belief that passion alone was enough. I had been a boy playing a boy's game, and I had been crushed by a man's world. I looked at my guitar, my beautiful, useless piece of wood and wire. It had brought me joy, but it had brought me no power. It had won me a girl's temporary affection, but it couldn't keep her. The world didn't run on beautiful melodies. It ran on cold, hard, undeniable cash. That was the moment the musician died, and the businessman was born. I made a vow that night, a blood oath to the gods of capitalism. I would not just survive. I would not just succeed. I would conquer. I would build an empire so vast and powerful that my past poverty would seem like a distant, laughable dream. I would become so successful that her choice to leave me would become the single greatest, most catastrophic mistake of her entire life. My motivation was no longer love or art. It was revenge. A cold, calculated, long-term revenge, served on a platter of overwhelming success. The first step was brutal. I packed up my guitar. I put away my notebooks full of half-finished songs. I needed a new skill, a practical one, a high-income one. My music was about audio, about frequencies, about creating an emotional response through sound. So I pivoted. I dove into the world of audio engineering and sound design for commercial applications. It was the soulless, corporate cousin of my passion, but it was profitable. I became a hermit, a monk dedicated to the grind. My life became a relentless cycle of learning, working, and sleeping for 4 hours a night. I devoured online courses on Pro Tools, Logic Pro, audio mixing for commercials, sound design for video games, Foley art. My brain, which had once been filled with chord progressions and lyrics, was now a database of compression ratios, equalization curves, and VST plugins. I started on freelance websites, taking any job I could get, no matter how small or demeaning. Mixing the audio for a terrible local mattress commercial for $50. Done. Creating sound effects for a crappy mobile game that no one would ever play. Easy. Cleaning up the dialogue on a podcast hosted by 2 guys who sounded like they were recording in a wind tunnel. I was on it. The work was grueling and unglamorous. But every dollar I earned was a brick in the foundation of my new life. I saved obsessively, living even more frugally than before. Every payment was a small fuck you, to the universe that had kicked me down. My portfolio grew. My skills sharpened. I started getting better clients, bigger projects. At agencies, indie game developers, corporate video producers. The money started to flow, a trickle at first, then a stream, then a river. I didn't stop. I didn't relax. I reinvested everything back into the business. Better equipment, better software. I hired other freelancers to handle the low-level work so I could focus on high-value clients. I built a system. I created a machine. While Kyle was probably at the country club, I was in my darkened room at 3 a.m., meticulously crafting the perfect soundscape for a car commercial. I didn't just work hard. I worked smart. I learned about business, about marketing, about sales. I wasn't just a technician anymore. I was an entrepreneur. I started my own boutique sound design agency. I built a brand known for quality and speed. The contracts got bigger. A national ad campaign. A major video game title. A streaming service's sonic branding. The numbers in my bank account started to look like phone numbers. I moved out of the crappy apartment. I bought a sleek, minimalist condo downtown with a panoramic view of the city. I started going to the gym, channeling my remaining rage into deadlifts and squats. The soft, skinny musician's body hardened into something lean and powerful. I learned to dress, swapping my worn-out band t-shirts for tailored shirts and expensive watches. I was forging myself into a new man, piece by piece. I didn't date. I didn't have time. Women were a distraction from the mission. My only focus was the accumulation of wealth and power, the construction of my fortress of solitude. Years passed. 5 of them. 5 years of relentless, obsessive, all-consuming work. The agency was a multi-million-dollar enterprise. I had diversified my investments. Real estate, stocks, angel investing in tech startups. I was no longer just comfortable. I was wealthy, truly undeniably wealthy on my own terms, built with my own hands and my own mind. I even started making music again. I built a state-of-the-art recording studio in my condo, a musician's paradise that my younger self would have killed for. But the music was different now. It wasn't sad or yearning. It was powerful, confident, complex. It was the soundtrack to my victory. I had almost forgotten about her. Megan. She was a ghost, a faded photograph from a past life. The anger had cooled, leaving behind only a cold, hard indifference. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text message. "Hey, it's Megan. I know it's been a while. You've been on my mind. I'd love to catch up if you're open to it." I stared at the message for a full minute. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, bro. My first instinct was to delete it, to block the number, to not even engage. But a different part of me, the cold, calculating part, took over. Curiosity. The final scene of the movie was about to play out, and I wanted a front row seat. I replied with a single, devastatingly neutral word, "Okay." The floodgates opened. A torrent of texts from her, explaining, justifying, reminiscing. Turns out, life with Kyle wasn't the fairy tale she'd advertised on Instagram. He was controlling. He was arrogant. He had cheated on her repeatedly and unapologetically. The family money had strings attached, and she was just a pretty accessory he paraded around at boring charity galas. They were divorced now. She got a settlement, but it was less than she deserved, and her lifestyle had taken a significant hit. She was living in a moderately nice condo, a pale imitation of the mansion she'd grown accustomed to. She was lonely. She was filled with regret. She talked about our real connection, about how she missed my passion, my soul, my music. It was a masterclass in revisionist history, painting herself as the tragic heroine who had made a youthful mistake. She was testing the waters, seeing if the old simp was still in there somewhere, ready to be reactivated. We agreed to meet for a drink. I chose the place, the most expensive, exclusive cocktail bar in the city, the kind of place where a single drink costs what my weekly grocery budget used to be. I wanted to set the stage. I arrived first, taking a seat at a secluded table. I was wearing a suit that cost more than her first car. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. The 5 years had not been as kind to her as they had been to me. There were faint lines of stress around her eyes and mouth. Her smile was forced, her posture defensive. The effortless glow of a kept woman had been replaced by the quiet desperation of someone who had peaked too early. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She scanned me from head to toe, taking in the suit, the watch, the quiet confidence I now wore like a second skin. I could see the gears in her head spinning, the spreadsheet reopening, the calculations running at lightning speed. The conversation was a disaster for her, a triumph for me. She tried to reminisce about our past, our cheap dates, our special connection. I was polite but distant, deflecting her attempts at emotional intimacy with cool, factual statements. She talked about her divorce, painting Kyle as a monster, herself as the innocent victim. I just nodded, offering no sympathy, no validation. She asked what I was doing now. I gave her the sanitized, 30-second elevator pitch about my agency, deliberately downplaying the scale of my success. But she was smart enough to read between the lines. She could smell the money. Finally, after an hour of this excruciating dance, she laid her cards on the table. Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time, tears of genuine regret. "I made the biggest mistake of my life. My name," she whispered, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I moved it away before she could make contact. "I was stupid and young, and I didn't know what was important. I never stopped loving you. I miss what we had. I see you now, and I see the man you've become, and I want a second chance. We could be so happy." There it was, the moment I had fantasized about in my darkest hours. The culmination of 5 years of relentless, soul-crushing work. Her broken, pleading, offering me the validation I had once craved more than anything. And in that moment, I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no joy, no satisfaction, just a profound, bottomless indifference. I looked at her, this ghost from my past, and I saw her for what she was. A woman whose love was conditional, whose loyalty was transactional, whose character was fundamentally flawed. I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment, watching the hope drain from her face. Then I leaned forward, my voice low and calm, every word a perfectly polished stone of truth. "You're right about one thing, Megan," I began. "You made a mistake, but you're wrong about what it was." She looked confused. "You think you made a mistake leaving me, but you didn't leave me. You left a broke, struggling musician with no future. And based on your value system, that was the correct and logical decision for you." I paused, letting the words sink in. "The problem," I continued, "is that you don't want me back. You don't want the guy who wrote you songs in a crappy apartment. You want the man sitting in front of you right now. The man with the successful company, the nice condo, the expensive watch. You're trying to reapply for a job you voluntarily quit, simply because the new CEO looks more promising." Her face crumbled. The tears were flowing freely now. "But, and this was the killing blow, the final perfect chord, the man I am today, the man who built all of this, would never in a million years choose to be with a woman of your character. The broke musician might have given you a second chance. But I'm not him anymore. You made sure of that." I stood up, pulling out my wallet. I dropped a few $100 bills on the table, more than enough to cover the check and a generous tip. A final, silent statement of the chasm that now existed between us. "It was interesting seeing you again, Megan," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. "I wish you the stability you're looking for." And then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Walking out of that bar and into the cool night air, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in 5 years. It wasn't a victory over her. It was a victory over the weak, broken boy she had left behind. I had won. Not by getting the girl, but by becoming a man who no longer needed her. If you've ever turned pain into power, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about leveling up and leaving the past where it belongs.